I have the great pleasure
to introduce Professor Lamberto Amistadi from Bologna, Architecture and Urban Composition, Framing and Filling.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation to this important seminar. Thank you for the invitation in this beautiful city, and thank you for the exposition of the work of Professor Kozlowski, the city of the immortals. I think that everything is immortal, everything. Not me, but the last tendency of the philosophy. Every experience that we have, every emotions that we live, everything. I will speak about one small part of the city, yeah? The urban composition, the composition. Composition is a very small part, but very important because it is the premise to the construction of the city. You could think that it is abstract, okay, it is abstract, but it is the same abstraction of the maths that permits all the commercial exchanging, all the very concrete and practical exchanging of money, of everything. I will start from this definition of composition by Ernesto Nathan Rogers, that in the structure of the architectural composition defined composing as putting together various things to make just one. Yeah, putting together various things to make just one. But the question is how to recognize the component of the composition that we have to put together to make just one. Yeah. And how to group, how to phrase, like to put together in a phrase, the components of the composition. So I will speak about this precondition, yeah? The precondition of the urban composition. The precondition in seeing something in something. Seeing something in something is not my concept, but it is one concept by Ludwig Wittgenstein, that say that in the 90 years, Ludwig Wittgenstein made some experiment about the rhythm, yeah, about the so-called subjective rhythm, and the experiment concerned the way in which different individuals perceive the same sequence of beats. Yeah? And the research showed that the same sequence of beats with the same tone, the same distance between the beats was perceived differently by different individuals. Not only differently, but groups in 2 beats, in 3 beats, in 4 beats, although the beats were at the same distance. This idea of hearing something in something or seeing something in something is older, because already Leonardo da Vinci spoke in this nuova invenzione di speculazione, in this idea that different individuals see in something, in some stains on the walls, different things. Yeah. Or Alexander Kozens, another teacher of landscape, that had the same method, that students have to draw some stains on the paper and recognize something, some elements of the landscape, yeah, something. Of course, you can recognize something only if you have in mind the idea of something. It depends on what you have in your mind. De Chirico, the great Italian painter, De Chirico said that the virgin mind is blind, because without idea in your mind you can't recognize everything in that stain on the wall. So, for example, I want to do this example about this question of seeing something in something, and about the question of grouping, yeah? To group the components of the composition in this project by Giorgio Grassi. Yeah, you know maybe Giorgio Grassi, this important Italian architect. In this project in Berlin in the 1981. Of course, if you have in your mind the idea of the urban block, you will recognize this is the project was to define this square, the Lutzwo-Platz in Berlin, because around the Platz there is a lot of empty spaces and a lot of mess. So nowadays, this place was composed in this way, because if you have the idea of the closed urban block, you will compose the components of the architectural elements within the field of the urban block. And so it is the situation. In this situation, the urban block gives the back to the square, and the square is out of the field of the composition, out of the field of the play, yeah? of the field of the, Vitruvius spoke about the field of the battle, architecture that it is like to compose in a field of the battle with the soldiers. Yeah? But for example, if in this many signs of the cartography, because the starting point of the composition, of the urban composition, is the cartography. Yeah? And on the cartography, on the technical cartography, you have a lot of signs, but you have to recognize something in something. If you recognize in the cartography the relation between the Siegessäule, the column of the Victory in the Tiergarten in Berlin, and this other square, if you recognize this relation, that your composition will be different. No more defined in the urban block, but trying to compose elements facing the square. And so now I'll show some sketches by Giorgio Grassi, because they are very interesting, not only about the question of the rhythm, because the rhythm is one of the main elements of all the composition in all the fields, in all the disciplines, in music, in painting, in architecture. Not only about the rhythm, but the trial to combine the relation between elements and the field. In this first sketch, there is not the field, yeah? But later, he starts to define the field together with the elements. And this is maybe interesting, in my opinion, too, because the contemporary situation of the city, of the contemporary city, because probably the difference between architectural composition and urban composition is this, that in the urban composition, the relation between the things that we have to compose is not only between the elements, but it is between elements and the field. This is interesting because this is the figural theme, yeah? These cracks, these double cracks here that contain this pre-existence building. And it is like these arms, this building could slide along this railway, yeah? This portico. And going on, it tried a lot of configuration, and at last it can understand well what is the field. And the field is painted by green here, in the case of Giorgio Grassi. Yeah? And this is the final configuration. Of course, on this framing and filling, on this composition, there starts the typological question. Yeah? The typological question begins from this premise of the recognizing something in something and to defining the relation between the components and the field. This is interesting because a lot of theoretical of architecture speak about deep structure, about the typology. Yeah? The typology is the deep structure. But it's interesting to note that the structure of the architecture has different levels of depth. This is the typology is one level, but that framing is another level of this process of the urban composition, the process of to construction the city. So now we can understand at last, we can understand the subtitle of my intervention, yeah? Architecture and urban composition, and the subtitle was Framing and Feeling. And this is what this important for me, in my opinion, sentence by this famous historical of the art, Gombrich, Ernst Gombrich. In a book a bit forgotten but very important, is the sense of order, where it is for me one manifesto of this dialectical relation between components of the composition and the field of action, or the field of possibility, or the field of the play, the chessboard. It is, but any hierarchical arrangement presupposes two distinct steps, that of framing and that of feeling. The one delimits the field or fields, the other organizes the resulting space. But to conclude, I want to let note that at last, as again Ludwig Wittgenstein said, at last, the final test, the final proof of any configuration is the convincing image. Yeah? The final proof has one aesthetical value. The final proof is an harmonious figure. Thank you.
Bardzo dziękuję.